Hi, my name's Cordy, and I just wanted to do a shortish video just talking about what I perceive as kind of the differences between the FM3 and the AXE FX3 and the reason for them both existing. Potentially it might help one or two people who are thinking about which to get make that decision. So the first thing to say is that the AXE FX3 is kind of their top of the line modeler, and that's where they've put their most powerful processing and all that sort of thing. I think you can find stuff online about the relative power of them. Apparently the AXE FX3 is something like 4 times as powerful. So in any case, what I've done is I've loaded up the exact same preset. So this preset on the FM3 is really pushing the CPU to its limit. So we're at 82%, and you can't really get much above that anyway because it starts to flash out warnings. Whereas on the AXE FX3 it's at 51.5%. What's in this preset is essentially two drive blocks, a trem, an amp, a cab, a Plex Delay, which is actually one of the fairly CPU intensive blocks, and a Nimbo Stratus reverb. And then on this other line we got a volume and 2 delays. So it's not loads and loads of blocks, but what is it? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 blocks. So you could compare that to whatever else you'd like, I guess. So 10 blocks in the FM3. Now on something like an HX Stomp you've got 8 blocks, which for me is fine, but just to make it the comparison. So one thing I wanted to talk about the FM3 that I really like before we get to limitations is this kind of switching configuration. So you can switch, when you hold in this middle button you go to the master layout, and you can choose between like presets or hold for longer, and you can get scenes effects, or if you hold longer here you can get to the looper. So it's really pretty powerful. I think if I get to gig this I'd be using it in scenes mode, and I've set up something similar with the AXE FX. So I really like this as a way of setting things up, and I think it's quite simple and quite straightforward to get used to. Take a bit of time, but it's not super complicated, and I really like having it all in that one unit in that way, and I guess that's why they've made the FM3 anyway. So things that it cannot do: it can't do dual amps, it can do dual cabs, you can't have more than one reverb. Depending on how you're setting up your presets, you might find that you run into DSP limitations. But I've got to say, I think for the average person, if you're you can use the channels and scenes, and you can run, you know, different amps on each channel and switch between 4 different amps, and you can do that with each of the effects blocks. I feel like there's enough power there that you should be able to get pretty much really good results out of it, depending on what you're trying to do. But if you're wanting to do dual amping and dual reverbs, then the FM3 is kind of out for that. The AXE FX3, obviously you can do all of that with it, so, and you can do dual amps. I think you can have 4 cabs per amp as well, and I think you can have more than 1 reverb. quick look. Yeah. But again, a reverb on these things seems to take up quite a lot of DSP. I think even with the AXE FX you could probably run into... Let's try this. So the AXE FX 3, I've just added these additional 7 blocks to this preset. So in terms of what you could practically do over and above what the FM3 does, I've added an extra delay, an extra compressor, another amp, another drive, another delay, and another reverb, and another drive again, or I guess you could change that to be like a cab block. And then you start to get to this insufficient CPU kind of warning. I don't know if I can add anything on here before getting that. Okay, so on this other preset I can add like a compressor and I get there. So whether it's 4 times as powerful or that kind of thing is not necessarily that obvious in terms of actual preset building, I guess. But I think you can see that you could do potentially quite a lot more given how many different blocks additionally you can have. And like you see there, I've got 2 Plex delays there. So the Plex delay, as I said, is super powerful, but the fact that I've got 2 of them in the same preset and 2 reverb blocks, I guess shows you that you've got potentially quite a wide scope. So maybe I'm gonna just put together a crazy preset with the AXE FX 3 just to show the kind of bounds of what it potentially could do. But those are kind of the key differences for me. I think there's parity in the amp models at the moment. Once we take this one to Cygnus or the firmware update, then the FM3 will be behind schedule on that. I don't think the drive block in the FM3 is up to date with the AXE FX 3. So they are running on a slightly different schedule in terms of firmware, and I guess you'd expect that, you know, given that this has more power and more potential, and this is the flagship product, that's the one that they upgrade the most often, I guess. And then the FM3 benefits from that, but it's kind of potentially a bit behind in the schedule. The other thing with the AXE FX 3 is that you're going to definitely need to budget in a foot controller of some kind. Now, personally, I could use my Helix to control this, or that's my ear, something like the FC6. But that could also be a super powerful way to get more out of the FM3. I think there's some people that have done the OMG9 foot controller layout. Definitely probably want to factor in a foot controller of some kind with the AXE FX 3. And to be honest, I think it'd be useful to use something that really easily programs with their stuff versus maybe programming your own MIDI controller or whatever. Something that's proprietary, I think, is useful for a number of reasons. So those are some of my thoughts about what is possible with both. I know some people do have issues with the DSP of the FM3. It'd be interesting to know in the comments if you're one of those people. But as an introductory unit into the Fractal world, I think the FM3 is really, really good. And it gives you that sense of how good the reverbs and delays are. It gives you that sense of how many kind of great modelled amps they've got through over the years. And the effects and all of that stuff are really good on it and work really well in the loop of an amp and into the front of an amp. So for me, the FM3 is very well priced and very competitive in that price range. I think, you know, you can't necessarily do all of the things you might do with a full Helix, but you know, certainly it can compete with a Kemper, that kind of thing. So yeah, let me know other things that I might have missed about what's different between these two units. You've got SP diff on both, you've got MIDI on both. You can do sort of double the amount of things in the AXE FX 3 that you can with the FM3 in a way, and then there's also the potential future updates with the AXE FX 3 which are probably a bit more open-ended than the FM3, I think. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll catch you for another video soon. Cheers!